Jeff Moody. If you can't find me using the name Jeff Moody, that's probably my fault. And I'm kind of like a bad rash. You can't get rid of me. So look us up, look for my book, The Doctor is Burned Out, A Physician's Guide to Recovery. It's coming out Tuesday, which has kind of been like two babies birthing to get that thing out, but it's finally coming out. I'm very excited about it. But what I'm even more excited about is the fact that right now, this second, I have Dr. Chris Saigal, who is the professor of urology in the Department of Urology at the UCLA School of Medicine and the vice chair of the department. He's served on multiple national committees. He is he's a principal investigator at RAND, which is like this secret think tank that like solves all the problems of the world in Santa Monica. And, you know, generally he's just kind of like a big deal. So I'm like super lucky to have him here. So grateful, so thankful. And I'm lucky to call him a friend and a colleague. So Chris, welcome to the Burnout Breakthrough live stream. And I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, you know, whatever I can do to help you in your cause, I'm happy to do.
Well, I feel like we're helping ourselves. You know, we're helping our colleagues. What I really wanted, I was very curious about, and the reason I want to have you on the show is because I feel like burnout is definitely it's very prevalent in the medical sphere and really across all aspects of, you know, the economy, and much worse, of course, like COVID turned it to like an 11 out of 10 in the last 4 or 6 months. But I really wanted to know what kind of has been maybe the academic center, because UCLA obviously one of the top, you know, medical schools and institutions in the country. What has been kind of the response, maybe obviously medically from COVID, but also from the staff standpoint. You guys, I'm sure, have been tons of changes. What have been response and for burnout? And then what do you feel like are maybe plans going forward? Is there areas of research that you might want to delve into? Those broad questions. So go.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, we take it quite seriously here, obviously. I mean, there's a couple of mechanisms we have to help physicians and faculty that are dealing with burnout. We actually have a physician named Karen Miata who specializes in helping doctors that are under stress for whatever reason. Those things often intersect with substance abuse or mental health issues that come as a result, I think, of work-life imbalance. So we are very quick to refer. We also have the hospital does a physician engagement survey every year of the physician workforce. I think in response to the fact that the surveys have shown an increasing level of dissatisfaction and just problems with professional motivation. And essentially that identifies different parts of our work life that as an organization, you can focus on making better. You know, one of the big sort of drivers or culprits people talk about in terms of burnout is the use of the EMR. And I'd say that our chief information officer here is a physician, and he's very interested in this topic. And it's a pretty big operation he runs, given the size of UCLA. It's definitely several $100 million a year budget. And he and his team study what aspects of new implementations result in that kind of physician dissatisfaction. How can you mitigate them? I think we try to make sure that new things that happen in the EMR are not driving the doctors crazy with, like the hard stops and all those kinds of little things that drive you crazy. It's very I think that we're understanding how to use the EMR better now, not perfect, but better to enhance the workflow and enhance the physician's work-life balance. But we also even track how many of our doctors are using the EMR after 7, for example.
That's a great data. So
yeah, and it's interesting. You see it's during the day, everyone's EMR use is going like this. Most everyone sort of comes down, and there's a spike after dinner, and that's and so for those people, when that happens, there's a SWAT team of essentially EMR experts that meet with those doctors to say, what's going on? How can we set you up with templates or make you more efficient so you're not doing that? So we have a variety of approaches from, I think, all the way from just one-on-one counseling to more system-based approaches to try to attack this problem, because it's a big deal.
That is, I'm you're one of the few people that I've actually talked to that you're actually like the studies all show there's personal factors and then there's systemic factors. Everyone wants to kind of like work on the personal factors, like do yoga and deep breathe and, take a crayon drawing class. I'm like, how about you help me with the fact that I spend 3 hours a day on the EMR when I used to spend 20 minutes a day writing my notes, like
Right.
help me with that, and I think very few systems have the insight and the foresight like you guys are doing. That's incredible. That's awesome. When I speak and I'll survey the audience, like how many people in the audience, all physicians, how many people are burned out by seeing patients and doing surgery? Like, one half of one person will raise their hand. How many people are burned out because of the EMR? Like, if people could raise both hands, they vote twice,
Right.
it's always concerning to me that the vendors never seem to make any improvements because I'm like, Google and Apple would never let a product like some of these EMRs out the door because the user experience is so bad. And it's like, why do you also want to take your highest valued asset in the system and reduce them to kind of an order entry clerk or a very hourly type job when you need to use their brains and not their time? I guess those are all things which I'm thrilled that you guys are doing that. I think having a physician as your CIO is like critical because then that person knows what it's like, and like the average EMR use is 350 minutes a day, and then another 60 to 80 minutes at night. I mean, like that's not like number one. Number two, my big issue with that is that like if there's a doctor shortage, let's not have doctors spend 50% of their day or more like not seeing patients and interacting with an EMR. So I just
Right.
so many system things.
Thrive now in our department, certainly, it's a whole new way to practice, but it just is so much better to edit some note than to write it. And I can talk to the patient, look at them in the face, not typing up my computer. It just, things have changed dramatically in medicine in the last 10 years. And I think hopefully there's some pendulum swing where, as you say, the system factors are changing to make it more livable for the physician, but they aren't there yet totally everywhere, obviously.
And one of the things I think about or talk about a lot, and I feel like if there was some data to back this up, some area of research interest or somebody, is, like, what if you looked at everything through the lens of physician wellness? Like what does this decision that we're making, how does that affect physician wellness or physician time or physician work versus like, is this more efficient? If this is a more efficient way to bill, but it takes like 19 clicks more to do it, and then we're always kind of, I feel like physicians are kind of, we're responsible for everything. And then we're always expected to kind of pick up the slack, whatever that is. I mean, true or false, do you feel like you're seeing, 2 or 3 times the number of patients you saw, 5 years ago or 10 years ago? I mean, the volume has increased, and without maybe commensurate kind of like, what do I want to say, value addition for you or time off or, extra resources, I feel like in medicine, we're one of the few specialties or few professions or few businesses where you're expected to work 10, 12, 15 hours a day with no resources or very few resources, very few support. But so I'm super excited to hear that UCLA is very much on the forefront of that. That's awesome.
And I think that will continue to change. Our practice styles will continue to change. I think that what you're talking about with the volume of patients being seen, that is probably something we're going to have to use technology to help us with, and more virtual care and physician extenders. I think that fee for service as a model is under a lot of pressure. The new Medicare rule for next year is cutting Medicare, cash conversion factor by 11%. And they're just pushing people more into these alternative payment models where you're really measuring other things and paid on other things. So we'll continue to, what we do will continue to evolve in terms of how we have our workday. But we have got to be vocal about what we need as a profession to deliver good care and what we need as just individuals to feel like we're able to deliver that care.
Yeah, to care for yourself. I mean, do you feel like shared decision making is a process that you would apply to how you move forward with your system? I mean, on a more global scale, obviously you use it for patients every day. But to me, that's like a paradigm for how you approach your system and say, hey, let's make these decisions together. And I'm sure there are committees and you or other, people serve on these committees to help with your hospital development and your system development. But I do feel like sometimes we get the last, the decision is made and then they run it by us sometimes as well, what do you think of this? The cake is already baked,
Right.
I wanted pie. I didn't want cake,
Yeah, no, exactly. You want to have sort of just a little bit of visibility into decision making, and not having to be a rubber stamp. I say that shared governance is a principle in the UC system. The faculty here had a lot of turmoil making that a reality in the 1970s, and as things consolidate in the healthcare industry, it's important to emphasize that kind of principle. I do think physician leadership at the highest levels of the hospital is important, or nursing leadership, but someone who delivers care that understands what that is about and what that really means, as opposed to a theoretical understanding of it. It's huge.
Kind of the implications and the effects of the decisions that are made and how they actually get implemented for the people who have to provide the care. I think there's sometimes a little bit of a disconnect with that at times.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Okay, so you, Chris Saigal, have you been burned out?
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, and that's, I guess, the one thing about academics that is a bit of a saving grace is that you can shift your activities a little bit. Like, I have a research career, so I can do that more or less based on research funding. I have an entrepreneurial side. I can exercise that aspect of it, and there is sort of this balance you can create. And I can turn down my clinic volumes and turn them back up based on what I'm interested in doing, which is a lot of control. So it's helpful. But yeah, I think it is absolutely the case. I'm 53, so I've been doing this for a few decades now, and I think that it can happen. And I do think the volume, the numbers of people you see, today is Thursday, I saw like 33 people yesterday in clinic, and it's just a lot of conversations.
Yeah.
And you got to be present for all of them,
right?
And quickly change context.
And you want to give quality care. And as a professor at UCLA, I think the bar is a little higher even for you, because people are like, you're the expert. They came from 200 miles away to see the expert. So I think the bar and the pressure is even a little bit higher for you. So, what did you, I guess, other than kind of adjusting your clinic volume, those things, did you do like other things? Are you like doing more like health maintenance things, supplements, diets, exercise? I know you're very, very fit and you exercise regularly or try to.
Well, for me, that is really the saving grace. And luckily, my wife is very supportive of that, because she knows what kind of pain I am if I don't get to exercise. So I get to do that every day at this point. And breaking a sweat for me at least, is a huge way to deal with that kind of thing.
Stress relief. Yeah.
It really helps. And thank God it's not having 5 drinks when I come home, but it's definitely breaking a sweat. Yeah. And it's a lifelong thing for me. It's been helpful. I got into meditation as I gotten older too, and that's been helpful. I've been using an app. So those are just, I think it's probably true for anyone at any profession. For a while, and you especially get higher up in your profession, there's more responsibilities. You got to balance it all out. You got a big practice if you're in private practice, and all the cases are coming to you, and there's just a lot incoming. So you're only one.
And I think that the critical thing is like you, even one step before all that, is like you made the decision that was a priority and you were going to make time for it. And that, like, come hell or high water, whatever else is going on, you're going to make sure you exercise, because that's how important it is. But I think a lot of physicians are like, I got to work really hard. I got to make my mortgage, or I got to be the most productive partner, or our overhead is high in my group. And people end up like kind of prioritizing that above everything else. And then everything else falls away. You get horrible health, you get horrible, sleep and nutrition, all those things.
It's just diminishing returns. I mean, you got to work smart. You cannot work yourself to death. You get less and less efficient at it. And you've just got to find ways to not do the things you don't want to do.
Do the things you like and don't do the things you don't like.
That's simple, but it's what you got to do. I mean, I also tell my daughter that basically you don't pay you a lot of money to do things that you want to do. But in medicine, we're lucky in that most of what we do is a job we want to do. It's fun. You learn how to operate. You can help people on a daily basis and get paid a good living for it. But the things that I don't want to do, I just try to build systems around them, and I'll sacrifice some amount of money or whatever it is, you know, or we as a department will, to basically not have that decrease in quality of life.
That's awesome. I mean, I of all the people I've talked to, not the other people have been not good, but I think you may have it the most figured out of any physician that I've talked to, because it's just I think, again, you back up a couple more steps. It's like, well, what do I want and what do I need out of whatever I'm doing? You know, you want intellectual fulfillment, you want personal fulfillment. I always kind of think of like the psychic rewards, you know, of the job. I think a lot of times for me are more than the monetary rewards.
Yeah.
And so, but you want to make sure those like buckets are getting filled, you know, equally. And I'm really proud of you. Chris and I worked together for a number of months and years.
You're my chief president, Jeff. So
and I was lucky because I had one of the best guys to work with. So I'm very, I like hate to say this without sounding condescending, but I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
Of how things have worked out and the work you've done and how well you've managed things. You like I said, you of anyone, like maybe you and Steve Lerman. Steve is also a professor at UCLA in pediatric urology, and I think they're the best like work-life balance people I've ever talked to. So because it's a priority, it's a priority, and you have to make it that way.
Right, and I think one thing that's also changed about medicine is that, you know, in the 70s, or maybe before Medicare was, you know, in place, physicians weren't huge wage earners, but they were pillars of their community, and there was this kind of vocational aspect to it. And there's a lot of benefit to that mentally, especially as you get older. And, you know, having a Ferrari or whatever, it's fine. It's not bad at all, but it's not the same thing as that kind of satisfaction. And I do think that that's changed. I mean, the public, you know, since the 60s, there's been changes in how people see authority figures, and there's a sort of a change in what experts are in society. And so the role of the doctor is much more, it's diminished to some degree, and that has eroded the ability to be satisfied in that way. I think that physician incomes have gone up, and people see physicians as like bankers and lawyers in some way, like they're sort of wealthier people, and they're different from average people. And that's eroded our position as well to some degree. So, you know, I think getting that sense of like being part of the community. Steve Lerman, you mentioned, he goes to Guatemala, you probably know, every year on a mission, and, you know, does essentially volunteer work in that area. Those kinds of things, you know, you're really not there for the money, obviously. You're there because you want to help people. That's the core of why you became a doctor, and it renews it. So those kinds of volunteer opportunities, I think, are helpful for people too to think about.
That's cool. It's very cool. What's next for Dr. Saigal? Chairman, new research opportunities?
Yeah, no, we're doing a bunch of good, interesting research on decision making. You know, we got a few grants we're funded for right now. Dave Fenton is one of the co-PIs, and I'm actually leading a large effort here to help us become a learning healthcare system at UCLA. I basically pick faculty from every department and train them on how to use data to improve care. Again, trying to get them to feel like owners of a system that impact the system, as opposed to being receivers of instructions. That's called it's a physician quality officer program. So I'm leading that, and I'm involved in a few other health system level initiatives to try to make things better here.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's you're probably, and actually it's interesting that I had a similar conversation with Dave Henson, who's the chair at Vanderbilt, for those of you who don't know Dave. But same thing, he said the exact same thing as far as like metering your exposure to the things that maybe, you know, are not your less fun parts of the job, and you get a lot of fulfillment from the research and then maybe the teaching aspects as well. So that's very cool. And we're, I think, very fortunate and lucky to have somebody as expert as you leading the charge to make all hospitals learning systems. I mean, you know, you and I, when we were working together, we would say, you know, like every day is a school day. It's like, you know, whatever happened, good or bad, learn from it, you know? So I think hopefully the system gets that message too. So
yeah, absolutely.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. Go find Chris at UCLA. If you live within a 500-mile radius, he's a great guy. He'll do good work for you. jeffmoody.com, jeffmoodymd.com. The doctor's burned out. Come find us there. Come find me on Facebook. Come find me at my office. I don't care where you go or what you do, but if you need help with burnout, please, please, please get the resources you need, either from Chris or from me or from anyone who can provide those services for you. And I always want to make sure you remember burnout recovery is for you. Okay. Thanks so much.